For those who would like to listen to the interpretation, it's channel 1 for French and channel 2 for English. Okay, they're coming in. Je m'appelle Lee Hibbard, je suis le modérateur pour la journée. Je teste l'interprétation tout d'abord et je travaille au Conseil de l'Europe, mais aujourd'hui je suis dans une capacité personnelle. Et voilà, on a beaucoup d'intervenants et je ne vais pas trop parler, mais pour commencer avec un petit bienvenue de la Bibliothèque nationale et universitaire de Strasbourg. C'est la première bibliothèque universitaire de la France, deuxième bibliothèque de la France. Apparemment, la bibliothèque a déjà plus que 3 millions de documents ici et au moins plus que 1 million plus de documents numérisés, j'ai entendu. Voilà. I'm going to switch to English as well in the course of the day. I'd like, first of all, before we come to Alain, to welcome Colin Robin over there in the far corner, who is the graphic reporter for the day. She will be listening to you and designing drawings and words about the day in a graphic form as a sort of a story for the day. So welcome, Colleen. As I said, we have a simultaneous interpretation, and we have a program which is quite heavy in terms of speakers. We're already over time, so I'll be very quick. Just to run you through the schedule for today. We have an opening session now with 4 speakers until 9:30. We have the first session, which will have a keynote plus some speakers from 9:30 to 10:30. We have a break at 10:30 to 11. And then we go to the second session, which is about practical exchanges with you and with other practitioners in the field of libraries. A real practical, down-to-earth exchange. Then we have a lunch between 12:30 and 2 o'clock, which will be preceded by a photo, together family photo, outside this building. And then we have a third session in the afternoon from 2 o'clock to 3:30, which will be broken into workshops. So this will be one of the rooms, but there'll be 2 other rooms allocated with moderators who will be taking you to the room, and you'll have a session there from 2 to 3:30. And then I think we have a break. I'm not sure. I have to see that with Vincent Bonnet. And then we have the closing session at 3:30 to 4 o'clock. So and we have a farewell coffee together at the very end. So that's the day. It's heavily packed, so welcome. I'd like really now to get going. And we have very not little time. So Monsieur Alain Colas, who is the General Conservator of Libraries here, Administrator of the National and University Library of Strasbourg. Please, Mr. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. On va en tout cas au tout début continuer peut-être à tester la traduction. Donc hors mot d'accueil, juste pour dire, parce qu'on disait quelques mots sur la BNU, je lisais dans les dernières nouvelles d'Alsace de ce matin. Les dernières nouvelles d'Alsace, c'est le quotidien de référence de Strasbourg et au-delà de l'Alsace. À propos de la BNU, justement, qui disait que la BNU, mon Dieu, n'est pas qu'une bibliothèque où on trouve des manuscrits, des incunables, mais bien d'autres choses. Voilà. Donc des choses plus simples et plus de l'ordre du quotidien. Donc c'était à propos de notre exposition mai 68 en Alsace. Voilà, donc en toute simplicité et sans protocole, mesdames et messieurs, chers collègues, en vos qualités diverses, vous me permettrez de faire ce mot en français, donc, et je serai très bref. Donc c'est une grande fierté et un vrai bonheur que d'accueillir cette conférence annuelle d'EBLIDA-NAPLE, ici à la Bibliothèque nationale et universitaire de Strasbourg. Bienvenue donc à toutes et à tous, vous qui représentez sans doute moins un pays qu'une pluralité européenne. C'est aussi une évidence que d'accueillir, alors j'ai eu l'occasion de le dire par ailleurs, une conférence qui porte ce très beau titre, « Les bibliothèques relient les frontières ». Alors quand je dis ici, je pense aussi bien à la ville de Strasbourg qu'à la BNU. Alors comme vous le savez, Strasbourg est une ville à la frontière. Il suffit d'emprunter un pont pour que cette frontière soit traversée. C'est sa chance. De fait, Strasbourg a été et continue d'être le réceptacle d'influences de toute nature. Et elle est elle-même le berceau de la diffusion des idées et des connaissances. Pour paraphraser Patrick Boucheron, je dirais qu'il y a une histoire mondiale de Strasbourg, ou tout au moins une histoire européenne. Alors la BNU est elle aussi exemplaire d'une histoire européenne des bibliothèques. C'est sa très grande spécificité et sa très grande responsabilité. Alors construite sur les cendres de bibliothèques combien précieuses à la suite des bombardements de 1870, ces collections ont été pour une grande part constituées grâce justement à la solidarité des bibliothèques partout en Europe au tournant de la fin du XIXe siècle. Elle s'inscrit donc parfaitement dans l'histoire de l'Europe. Elle est bien aussi une bibliothèque européenne. C'est en tout cas notre ambition. La BNU a déjà en dépôt la bibliothèque du Conseil de l'Europe depuis 2009. Notre fonds sur l'Europe est labellisé Collection d'excellence pour l'enseignement supérieur et la recherche en France. Mais nous voulons aller plus loin, porter l'idée de bibliothèque européenne au sein de corps, le campus européen, et de travailler vraiment avec d'autres bibliothèques en Europe à cette construction. Alors il ne s'agit pas de construire une forteresse de plus qui abriterait quelques millions d'ouvrages, mais d'imaginer une bibliothèque sans mur, un espace ouvert qui soit un lieu d'échange et de liberté, par où transiteraient compétences, innovation dans les services, idées nouvelles. En d'autres termes, construire de la valeur et non plus des silos cathédrales et la diffuser le plus largement possible. Alors il va sans doute en être beaucoup question au cours de cette journée, car c'est au cœur de nos missions, à nous, bibliothécaires et documentalistes, créer de la valeur en promouvant par notre savoir-faire ce qui finit par devenir finalement un bien commun, le livre en bibliothèque sous toutes ses formes. Voilà, donc je ne vais pas être plus long, je voudrais remercier évidemment toute l'équipe d'EBLIDA-NAPLE pour l'organisation de cette journée, remercier aussi l'équipe au sein de la BNU qui est là en soutien bien sûr et pendant toute la journée, remercier Christophe Didier, Frédéric Blin, je les vois ici, et puis Vincent Bonnet qui a été notre go-between pendant plusieurs semaines et ça a été vraiment très agréable de correspondre avec lui, je l'ai vu tout à l'heure et je crois qu'il va connaître d'autres aventures très, très prochainement. Voilà, donc je vous souhaite des échanges fructueux et une très belle journée en espérant que l'orage ne nous tombe pas sur la tête aujourd'hui. Voilà.
Merci. Merci, Monsieur Collat. Merci. Camille Gangloff is a Deputy Mayor of Strasbourg and Councillor of Strasbourg Eurométropole. Camille, you have the floor. If you can tell us more, thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Mesdames et messieurs, chers bibliothécaires, if you allow me, I will continue in French. I think it's also good when we are here to be able to speak in French, but we can also exchange in English later on if you want. Je suis vraiment très heureuse de pouvoir vous accueillir aujourd'hui ici à Strasbourg au nom du maire de Strasbourg, Roland Ries, et du président de l'Eurométropole, Robert Herrmann, à l'occasion de cette conférence très intelligemment intitulée « Libraries Bridging Borders », les bibliothèques relient les frontières. Je voudrais moi aussi sincèrement remercier les organisateurs pour avoir choisi Strasbourg pour organiser la 26e réunion du Conseil annuel d'EBLIDA, ainsi que cette conférence. Je crois qu'il n'y avait vraiment pas de meilleur territoire pour accueillir un réseau européen de bibliothèques, d'information et de documentation sur une thématique comme celle-ci. Cela a été dit, Strasbourg est en effet intrinsèquement liée à l'histoire de l'Europe, berceau de l'humanisme rhénan. Elle a été profondément marquée par les conflits européens du siècle précédent, mais elle est aussi et surtout symbole de réconciliation et d'expérimentation d'une Europe plus proche des citoyens, une Europe fondée sur des valeurs à l'image des institutions européennes que nous accueillons, comme le Conseil de l'Europe et le Parlement européen, que je crois certains d'entre vous ont pu visiter. J'insiste là-dessus car nous vivons une période sombre à plus d'un égard. Je crois qu'il y a un sentiment dans nombre de nos pays auprès des citoyens, un sentiment de déclassement auprès de ceux qui ont subi durement les crises économiques et financières. On sait aussi qu'il y a une perte de repères dans un monde ultra connecté où tout va très vite mais où finalement l'accès à une information de qualité est devenu un enjeu. Nous voyons aussi une jeunesse européenne qui peine vraiment à trouver sa place et à imaginer son avenir. L'on voit aussi ce repli identitaire qui est stimulé, renforcé par ce phénomène migratoire amplifié, notamment du fait du conflit syrien, mais pas seulement. On le voit, tous ces facteurs aujourd'hui contribuent à faire monter les extrêmes et les nationalismes dans beaucoup de pays européens, et l'histoire nous a montré où cela peut mener. Mais ici, à Strasbourg, nous sommes convaincus que le projet européen reste plus que jamais d'actualité pour répondre à ces défis. L'Europe dont on parle alors, c'est vraiment une Europe fondée sur ses valeurs, le respect des droits de l'homme, la tolérance, la solidarité, et une Europe qui se soucie des citoyens, une Europe accueillante, qui porte un projet de société ambitieux. Pourquoi je dis cela? Parce que cette Europe, c'est comme ça que nous la concevons ici à Strasbourg, c'est comme ça qu'elle s'imagine et qu'elle s'invente au quotidien, et notamment dans sa dimension transfrontalière. Véritable laboratoire d'Europe, nous nous efforçons de construire des ponts pour relier les gens de part et d'autre du Rhin. Vous avez évoqué tout à l'heure ce tram qui traverse le Rhin, alors que dans beaucoup de pays, aujourd'hui, on construit des murs. Je crois que construire des ponts, c'est quand même ce qu'il y a de plus cher. Nous créons ces passerelles à l'image du réseau de lecture publique de l'Eurométropole, qui s'appelle le réseau Passerelle, et qui s'étendra à la médiathèque de Kiel, de l'autre côté du Rhin, à partir de septembre 2018, et j'aurai l'occasion d'y revenir dans la prochaine session. Cette passerelle, me semble-t-il, est vraiment fondamentale. Parce que les bibliothèques, elles ont cette vocation de service public, elles sont ouvertes à toutes et à tous, elles offrent cet accès facilité à l'information, à la culture, à la connaissance, elles sont finalement des acteurs de premier plan pour relier les individus, les territoires et les savoirs. Vous écriviez dans la présentation de la conférence que nous avons besoin de bibliothèques qui relient les frontières. Je dirais même, si vous le permettez, que nous avons surtout besoin de bibliothécaires qui dépassent, qui effacent les frontières. Et je crois que c'est ce qu'ils font au quotidien par leur engagement, leur créativité, leur détermination à partager une passion pour la lecture, pour la culture, à accompagner toutes celles et tous ceux qui poussent la porte de leur établissement. Pour conclure, je voudrais reprendre les mots de Welibor Čolić, qui est un écrivain d'origine bosniaque, réfugié, et qui a trouvé dans les bibliothèques, et notamment celle de Strasbourg, un lieu d'accueil, de ressources, mais aussi un lieu d'inspiration et de créativité, puisqu'il nous a fait l'honneur d'écrire un petit ouvrage qui s'appelle Strasbourg Omnibus, en référence à son livre Sarajevo Omnibus, où il livre une réflexion sur l'exil, les frontières et cette humanité qui doit nous relier. Il écrit « Si l'on veut bâtir des passerelles entre les gens, entre nous et les autres, forcément on finit tel un grand vainqueur, et un grand bâtisseur au final. Une histoire reste vraie, la liberté n'est pas au commencement mais à la fin, l'extrémisme est une bête qui se nourrit de la peur et du vide. Que faire alors? Soyons alors créatifs et soyons courageux, et nous gagnerons cette guerre. » Aujourd'hui, ensemble, nous allons avoir l'opportunité d'évoquer des projets, des succès, des obstacles et aussi des idées pour l'avenir. Je crois qu'il faut que nous prouvions ensemble que nous pouvons être et créatifs et courageux pour relever ces défis, surtout celui d'un accès plus facile à une information de qualité, à la culture, préalable à une société plus éclairée. Je me réjouis d'avance de pouvoir partager cette journée avec vous et je nous souhaite des échanges très riches et très fructueux. Merci.
Merci Camille, merci beaucoup. Alors prochainement, Xavier Galaup, président de l'ABF, il n'est pas là, il ne peut pas participer. Donc Julie Camus, comité international de l'ABF, est-ce que Julie, vous êtes là? Très bien. Julie, prends le temps. S'il vous plaît, merci.
Good morning. As you can see, I'm not Xavier Galaup. He could not be there today. Xavier Galaup is our president of French Librarian Association, and please forgive him for this. So, ABF, our association, would like to thank EBLIDA for choosing France this year to organize the Congress. We are very proud to welcome the event, especially in Strasbourg. In this city, we can count many dynamic libraries, academic, like here, or public, as André Malraux, that you might visit visited yesterday. Those structures those structures play a major role in the local but also national cultural life. Theoretically, libraries are here to broaden possibilities to people. It encourages them to cross borders physically or as a symbol. We are all here, all convinced of this statement. But daily reality sometimes draws borders regarding the lack of time, the lack of budget, our colleague old habits, or politicians that might sometimes not follow the same view. Sorry. More concerned sometimes by public opinion than public welfare. So sometimes we have to stay behind the borders. Bring to the table this topic invites us to stick to our convictions. All the more as we live in a world more and more open, digital, mobile, with less and less borders. ABF is totally involved in that field of concerns thanks, among others, her regional groups. They tackle the issue of welcoming migrants in French libraries many times in the past few years. They are also focused on the importance of diversity in the collections or cultural events we propose. Besides, we are going to launch next week, during our annual congress that will take place in La Rochelle, an initiative to facilitate the recruitment of migrants in libraries, with a training scheme if they are not librarians. It's an example of making gesture to facilitate their integration. As a conclusion, it is interesting to notice that good ideas are in the air. The theme of next ABF Annual Congress might be Libraries Facing the Trial of Borders. Cultural, professional, geographic, and it will deal with the same subjects as we are going to talk about today, thanks to EBLIDA, but also the symbolic borders we have in our professions or regarding our public. So Xavier Galaup and I, that I represent today, want to wish you to have a nice time during that Congress and also a very nice stay in Strasbourg.
Merci Julie, merci beaucoup. Donc, le dernier intervenant pour l'ouverture, c'est Tine Vind. Tine is the NAPLE's chair, the NAPLE Forum chair, and the co-organizer of this Libraries Bridging Borders event, together with EBLIDA. Tine is a trained librarian, and she represents the Danish Agency for Culture and Palaces. Palaces, indeed. Thank you. Tell us more about palaces, Tine. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Yes, let's talk about the palaces later. Thank you very much, and thank you to Bibliothèque Nationale et Universitaire for hosting this conference, and also thank you to Strasbourg, the wonderful city, not only for the city itself, it's wonderful, but also for the nice weather. Thank you all. So on behalf of NAPLE, which is the national authorities on public libraries in Europe, and EBLIDA, which is the European Bureau of Library Information and Documentation Associations, we are gathered here today to have a joint conference, which we have every year, and this year is in Strasbourg. What we have been discussing yesterday in our different meetings is lots of questions that we were going to raise also today. Is the library sector today under pressure? Is democracy, free access to information for children and adults, a sparse resource? And how can we persuade governments to put emphasis in the library sector? The access to knowledge is a vital part of the modern society, but often we curators are a little in doubt of what's going to do, whether we have demonstrated enough the possibility and the need for the strong libraries. The public library sector, together with the research libraries, they form a unique possibility to raise the community to new higher standards of knowledge. In Europe, we have more than 65,000 public libraries, and we believe that libraries empower individuals and build stronger communities. If we cross the borders and bring the rest of the world inside, we can make a large effort together. I'm aware of the responsibility of a strategic view on libraries on a national level, but the local governments around the world play an important role to expand the ideas and bring people together in collaboration with other cultural institutions and the public school, for instance, and the daycare or everything like that as well. We also sometimes have problem with people getting access to the libraries and to use the library as well. For instance, in Denmark, where I come from, only half of the population use the public libraries. I think we got a challenge there. So if the library should bridge the borders, we have to invite the other half of the population in a better way so that they feel included in a broader perspective. The user, they ask for more access to content, but digitization is a two-sided part of a challenge for us. Both spreading the content faster and also get the content closer. But it's a matter of copyright, and maybe we will discuss these restrictions later on. I'm looking forward to have a nice conference here today and to speak of all of you during the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. I think I'd like to, while Chris Welch comes to the podium to start his presentation, can I invite Tina to come to the chairs, and Kathrin, please, and Jukka, because you're part of this next session. While Chris gets set up, I just want to say that from my experience coming from a field of internet-related issues at the Council of Europe and human rights and all sorts of things, it's quite interesting to see that this profession of libraries is so open and understands the context of information and content and curation and navigation and the transition towards what is numeric, which is digital, and the challenges there. And so we find ourselves in, amongst other actors. And this bridging borders is also bridging actors. And the question of silos is everywhere a problem, not just maybe in the field of libraries. On that point, and I hope your slides are charged up, Professor Chris Welch from the International Space University, who's going to give us a presentation, a keynote rather, on bridging beyond borders, the moon as a future location for archiving and preserving human data indefinitely, ? Chris is a Professor of Space Engineering at the International Space University in Strasbourg, Director of Master's Programs, Vice President of International Astronautical Federation, Member of the European Commission H2020, Space Advisory Committee, the 2009 Sir Arthur Clarke Award for Space Education, and the 2015 IAF Distinguished Service Award. Do I need to say anything more, Chris, or shall I pass the floor to you?
I think that's plenty.
Thank you.
If I could have my slides, I don't know.
Oh, you have done other slides, okay.
I can see them on the screen there, but they're not on the screen here. I don't know. I don't know if that's done at the back.
David, the technician,
yeah, I think something's happening. Okay, so, well, thank you very much to NAPLE and EBLIDA for inviting me to give this talk. I haven't actually spoken to a group of librarians before, so I hope that what I have prepared works well. I'd also like to thank the city of Strasbourg for hosting ISU. I've lived here for 7 years now, and it's the first time really I've kind of hosted people as I've walked around the town last night, and I found I was enthusiastically describing the many merits and attractions of Strasbourg, a city that I realise I now think of as my home, even though as somebody from the UK, that is a complicated issue just at the moment. Anyway, enough of Strasbourg, enough of Earth. This is a talk about the moon. In case anyone hasn't looked at the moon recently, okay, that is the moon. We're just a little bit past full moon. It was full moon on Tuesday, but if you still want to look at the moon and you want to look at it at night, there should still be time tonight if the weather is good. So that is the moon. I will put that down here for now. So this is a talk called Black Sky Thinking, the kind of reference being it's like blue sky thinking, but to do with space where the sky is black. And here you can see, the Earth. And as you will note, there are no visible borders on the Earth when seen from the moon. So I need to say a little bit about ISU so you know where we're coming from. Okay, ISU is based in Strasbourg. We've been here for 20 years now, or a bit more than 20 years. We're a slightly strange institution. We are fairly small. We are private but not for profit. Our Chancellor is Buzz Aldrin. The previous one before that was Jean-Jacques Dordain, the then Director General of the European Space Agency, and Sir Arthur Clarke. We're not a science school, we are not an engineering school, we are a space school, and we are interdisciplinary. Okay, so these are all the topics, okay, that we teach at ISU: engineering, science, human performance in space, application, management and business, policy, economics and law, and humanities. Students on my master's will get a lecture on orbit mechanics in 1 hour, and the next hour they're listening to a space artist. Okay, it's that diverse. And we specialize in what we call the 3 I's, being interdisciplinary, international, and intercultural. And we try to bring people from all around the world, different disciplines, and we put them together, okay, to make them, work on space topics. Okay, over our lifetime, okay, we get excited every time we color in a bit more of the map, but you can see where we haven't got the whole globe yet. I used to say it'll be a long time till we get North Korea, but who knows at the moment, that might happen. We might get a student from North Korea sometime soon. But you can see on an international scale, there is still a problem with places like Africa, where it's a matter of information and funding to be able to recruit African students. That's just the programs we run. The Masters here in Strasbourg. We have a summer school that moves around the world each year. Last year it was in Ireland. This year it's in Holland and Delft, and next year it will be here in Strasbourg. So we're looking forward to that. But a key part of every ISU program is our interdisciplinary team project, and that's where the kind of core of this talk comes from. So we come up with a problem of some sort that's space related. Sometimes it's what we call looking out across the solar system. Sometimes it's about space for humanities. Here today, I'm obviously sort of looking more outwards than back towards the Earth. But for instance, we've had projects on space and migration, space and water supply, as well as ones about going to Mars. So we cover a wide range. So we put a bunch of students together and we give them a complicated interdisciplinary problem, and they have to study it in an interdisciplinary way and come up with a solution that hopefully addresses all the issues. And since this is library commons, this is a picture of ISU's library out at Ilkirch. Muriel, our librarian, would shoot me if I didn't give a kind of shout out to her library. So that's our library. So, okay, this is some examples of our team projects. I've just picked moon-related ones over recent years, and you can see we've looked at living on the moon, making fuel on the moon, going to the moon and doing science, but critically for today, this one here, Phoenix, which is a lunar archive project. So the kind of underlying idea of the Phoenix team project was, what if something bad happens to the Earth? Somebody said to me last night, I hope you're going to give a cheerful talk. And I said, well, apart from the bit about the near extinction of the human race, yes. Because there are many existential threats to humanity. Okay, I think nowadays everyone's heard of asteroid impacts and understands that, but there are others which aren't space related, such as a nuclear winter. Maybe if the Korea thing goes bad, that could happen, or super volcanoes could erupt. There's many potential ways that sort of humanity would find itself in an extended position. And so the idea here was to support the rebuilding of humanity after such an event by providing archives that would have both a kind of a repository of human information and human culture, but also specifically focused information to enable the development of those societies again afterwards. It wasn't just about the moon, it was also about repositories here on Earth, but the ultimate backup was the one on the moon, because that was thought to be close enough to communicate with easily, and in principle get to if you had to, whereas putting it on Mars or somewhere further away would be very difficult. But as you'll see later on, there are people with all sorts of ideas for doing different things. So that was the idea, to help us rebuild. So you would have a repository of all human knowledge. Does that mean Wikipedia on the moon? Is that all human knowledge? Some people think so, as we will see later on. but the main aim was to support the survival and eventual self-sufficiency of survivors using relatively primitive technology. So you had to be able to communicate with this archive, for example, at the least by amateur radio, which is about the lowest level of radio technology there is, while at the same time supporting higher bandwidth, higher data transfer capability. The team didn't specify the particular technologies because these emerge, so fast and they move forward so quickly. So, at the moment, laser communication in space is the new thing, but we're already starting to see the emergence of quantum communications for links between Earth and space. And so ultimately, there may be some very capable communication technologies, but of course we can't know what will be left over after a kind of extinction level event. Similarly, it's about rebuilding society and having built into the system a user interface that includes self-education capabilities. And I know that there's some interesting work being done. There's a test going on in Tanzania at the moment with some units that are meant to sort of take a child through and basically educate them from just playing with it up to teaching them to read and beyond. I don't know how many of you have heard of the X Prize Foundation. They're well known in the space sector because they propose some prizes for spaceflight, but they've also proposed a global literacy X Prize, and they're developing these units which you can, in theory, give a child, and it will teach the child just from playing with it up to ultimately reading. So we would expect there to be these sort of technologies, and there's a big dish here, there's a small dish here, there's other communications facilities over there. What you actually put in would depend on when this actually happened. Some key requirements for this archive: it needs to be underground in order to protect it, both in order to provide a better environment for it. It needs to have long-term survival, which is another reason for putting it underground. Every so often, the sun has a massive, what's called coronal mass ejection. There was an event in the 1880s called the Carrington event, which, if repeated today, would destroy most of the world's electronic infrastructure. It would induce electric currents which would burn out all our computers. So if you're going to have an archive on the moon, you want to bury it down underground, so if there is one of those events, it doesn't get affected. I'm not depressing you, I hope, by all this discussion of... But, these are things that in the space community we are looking at. The European Union, European Space Agency, is looking at what is called space weather and what would happen to our critical, infrastructures in the event of such an occurrence. It would really need to be automated. There may be a possibility for some of you to have spacesuits and and go and work there, but I think that would be more on a visiting basis. The whole purpose is it has to be automated to support us here after everything falls down. And there would be lots of different sorts of Earth-Moon communication link. The team, because we're ISU, it's not just about the technical solutions though, and I haven't got so much time to go through this, but just to show you that they have looked at how you set it up, how you fund it, how you would manage it. They've created an international organization, theoretically, to do that. That's one of the kind of ISU insider jokes, because every time we give a team a project, part of the solution is to set up a new international organization. And we do encourage them to sort of look at the interactions or see if an existing organization might take this on, but whether it be the UN or the International Telecommunications Union or so on. But just to kind of show you that the report goes wider than just the technical solutions, and the report, I should say, is downloadable from the ISU library website. All our team reports are there in PDF format. But I want to move away from that project onto some other things, because it's not just ISU who have been thinking of this. There have been some other interesting approaches, and this was a UK concept. I'm kind of pleased to say, in a slightly patriotic sort of manner, called Lunar Mission 1 in 2015, and this was a little bit creative. There were some scientists who wanted to go to the South Pole of the Moon and drill a deep hole so they could do science and go all the way down. And they were thinking, how can we get the money for this? I don't know, what have we got to sell? we've got a deep hole on the moon to sell. What could we do with that? I know, we could put an archive in it. We could charge people, okay, or organizations to upload digital data, and it could be transferred to the moon, and it could be put right at the bottom of this 100-meter hole where, in principle, it would be safe for millions, if not billions of years. And that was their idea. And for, you know, if you wanted to, you could also send a little clip of your hair so that your DNA could be presumably reincarnated, you know, in the future or something. I never quite understood why you would want to send a lock of your hair to the moon, but that's just me. Some people apparently do. So it got off to a really good start. There was a crowdfunder campaign, Kickstarter campaign that raised £1 million you know, around the world for the first stages. The problem is this is about a €15 billion project. So it hasn't really gone anywhere, but it shows the way people are thinking. They're starting to look at the moon and see what other purposes it might have, what else you might be able to do with it. Oops, sorry, let me skip back to... So, one of my then students, Melissa Guzman, and I, this was her individual project on the Masters, looked at this broader concept of eternal memory. How do you put things into space? Where do you put them in space? How do you store them? And how can you ensure people find them afterwards? Because again, if you want to bury information caches around the solar system for, you know, people in the future, they have to be able to find them. And so if you put them, say, underground on Mars or one of the moons of Saturn, you need to find a way to mark them. And again, this paper is online. If anyone's interested in any of these things, you know, you can send me an email afterwards, and I will be happy to share them. But it shows that there is interest in both long-term storage for data indefinitely, and also, you know, where you might put it. At the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, they still have data that was produced by some of the space missions in the 1970s. And this data is stored on old school wide computer paper, printed, folded up in boxes in airtight rooms, because that's the safest way to store that data. If they ever need it, they can pull those out and run them through a scanner. But rather than converting from format to format to format to format and constantly having to address new changes, they've just decided to store it on paper. And it's a simple solution, and it works, and it doesn't, you know, cost anything beyond the operation of the room. So high tech is not always what you would, you know, in the space sector, is not always what you would expect. But there are many other techniques. DNA is an example. You can store information in DNA. In fact, how many of you have read Kurt Vonnegut's science fiction? Any of you? There's a short story there where it turns out the entire purpose of the human race is just to record a message from one alien to another alien in our DNA, and that's why there's life on Earth. Yeah, I'll leave you a message. Pick it up in 100,000 years when you're passing, and that's why we're here. So, yeah, information storage in DNA. Oops, this keeps skipping. Moon Express is one of a number of missions, commercial missions, that's looking to go to the moon. I mentioned this one in particular because it has an ISU connection. Bob Richards, one of the founders of this, is also one of the founders of ISU, but it's one of about 3 or 4 private space missions to the moon. And all of these missions are planning to take data with them, data storage, small archives, either professional or, again, personal. So you can buy your storage on the moon. But this one in particular is the first one that has received permission for approval of flight, because you can't go to the moon without permission from your government. And this is the first private mission, okay, to the moon that's received approval from anybody, and this is a US mission. So should be going in 2019, will be carrying data. But there's other companies. Astrobotic is another one in the US that is sending a rover and will also be taking data. In a more sort of European international context, the current Director General of the European Space Agency has proposed a moon village. I think he used that phrase because it's snappy in terms of publicity. Journalists go, "Oh, Moon Village, that sounds nice. You know, will there be, will there be a library?" Every village should have a library. Yes, I mean every community. I think he used that term also because it's a little bit more snappy than saying it's an open architecture, collaborative international, framework for future lunar operations. Basically what it means is let's all go to the moon, but not as some part of some massive international program, but each doing what we can do. So big countries can do big stuff, but small countries can do small stuff. Now, why do I mention this here? Well, it's a community initiative. It is beyond borders. There's actually an association being set up. The Moon Village Association has been set up to promote this internationally because this is his idea. It's not an official space agency plan. And we had the first conference here at ISU in November. And as a result of this, they have set up all sorts of working groups, including lunar data harmonization and Moon Village standards. Because if you're going to have all these different countries going to the moon, there's not much point in they're all using different data formats and can't talk to each other. So this will enable that sort of functionality in future lunar operations. Hot off the presses just about, this came out 2 weeks ago, okay? The Ark Foundation, apparently they pronounce that Ark rather than Arch, I guess because it's like a historical ark, is a US non-profit dedicated to establishing an archive of humanity in space. I think that's a good idea. I'm not so sure about the next bit, because this month, 2 weeks ago, it announced its plans to send millions of Wikipedia pages to the moon. I can think of, I'm not against Wikipedia per se, but we all know it has its limitations. So I'd like them to send other things rather beyond Wikipedia. They're using a high-tech, low-tech approach, if you see what I mean. They're going to, I'm looking at the age profile. How many people here have used microfiche? Is that still in use in libraries? When I was doing my PhD, it was all I bought my own microfiche reader as a PhD student because, so I can. So this is the high-tech equivalent of microfiche. Okay, you've got all these pages etched onto these super thin plates. Each one is 20 microns thick. So in this distance, okay, you can stack apparently 30 million pages. I think you must have to be very careful when you put them on. So there are things happening. Set against this, though, there's a slight problem with space law, because all the space law was established by the UN 50 years ago and into UN treaties, and it was on the basis that only nation states would do things in space. So anything that involves space, there has to be a nation state involved that gives you approval. So if you want to fly to the moon, you have to get permission from your government and the launching government where the rocket is going from. So you have the Outer Space Treaty, okay, which was the first one, and there's a whole bunch of other ones there. But in particular, the Moon Treaty says the moon is not for sale. You can't go there and just grab stuff, but actually it's considered a failed treaty because it's only ratified by 18 states, and all the major players have just gone, no, we don't want to sign that because we might want to do business there in the future. So they're looking at the moment about trying to kind of reboot the legal regime. And in fact, in a couple of weeks in Vienna, we have Unispace Plus 50, which is the 50th anniversary of the original space treaty, and it will address the future course of global space cooperation, looking at space economy is one of the first ones. That was never there in the early times, but also society, accessibility, and diplomacy. So there may be some interesting announcements, in certain parts of the media in a couple of weeks. So I'm just about out of time, so I'll just show you my last slide. I was trying to find something that would merge space, knowledge, culture, because ISU is interdisciplinary. And so here we have a poem by the Tang Dynasty poet Zhang Juling. The moon grow full now over the sea, brightening the whole of heaven, brings to separated hearts the long thoughtfulness of night. It is no darker, though I blow out my candle. It is no warmer, though I put on my coat. So I leave my message with the moon and turn to my bed, hoping for dreams. So for me, Okay, the whole of heaven is the future, what we're looking forward here, trying to come up with new ideas. The thoughtfulness of night. I hope when you go home this evening you will have received some good ideas, you will have had some good discussions. We will hopefully send our messages to the moon. We will establish archives off Earth in due course, and these at the moment are dreams, but hopefully in the future we can make them happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. You can sit down or you can stay there. Thank you for the presentation. Very inspiring. I can think of lots of jokes with, that was a stellar presentation and let's come back down to earth. But I won't go there now. There are 3 other people on this panel, but before we get to you, I'd like to sort of queue up the audience for 1 or 2 questions, if you have them, to Chris first of all, before we go into an interactive session, because you are the keynote. I was very inspired, but while you're thinking about maybe 1 or 2 questions, we have microphones roaming in the room. I'd like to start, Chris. You mentioned about, we hear about libraries and about bridging borders or even breaking borders. That's not me, is it? No, it's not. It's okay. You mentioned a very important word, which is very current for me. My own work is about the question of automation. And automation refers to me to artificial intelligence, processes without humans, and libraries and bridging borders is all about humans. So what does that mean? I mean, we're looking ahead, we're looking at investments, we're looking at the future. What's your learning, what's your bridge towards librarians here in their practical day-to-day work? Because this will end up being an interactive session on libraries and how they function. What's your learning regarding what you do and in the future of libraries? Thank you.
Okay, well, I mean, this was about the concept of an archive on the moon, and certain aspects of it would certainly have to be automated. I'm not sure I like the idea of like an AI library on the moon. For me, that probably brings to mind too many kind of science fiction type scenarios. So certainly the idea was, although this was located on the moon, it was part of a bigger network, including archives on the ground, which were controlled by humans. It's just the remoteness of it that requires it to be automated or near automated. That said, I mean, this study was done a few years ago when the prospect for humans going to the moon did not look so strong. If we were to develop systems where getting to and from the moon was easy, maybe there could be people here, working in a lunar archive. So I don't see it as human versus machine. No. It's always, I mean, we have this argument a lot in space exploration. Should we send people or should we send robots? And the two sides will argue. It's a stupid question. It's which is best, which combination of the best is best for the purposes, and it's almost always a combination of the two. Sometimes, okay, if you want to go to Mars at the moment, you would send just robots, but ultimately everybody, the geologists say we have to go there and we have to hit the rocks with a hammer, okay? That's the only way to really do it. So it's always going to be about people using machinery to do what they need to do.
Thank you. But technology is there and it's everywhere and it's growing, and I think technology must be a very big part of your own work and a growing part of your work. I'm going to invite questions, but first of all, just a quick hand-raising thing for you. In terms of looking forward to the future, we're looking towards a combination of automation and humans and archiving and information and curation and the transfer of knowledge. The principles of in what you work, I imagine. Hands up when you look forward to the future of libraries, and you look forward to all this technology coming through. Do you feel excited by that? Do you feel worried by that, or do you feel indifferent about the future of libraries and technology? Can I ask you to put, for those of you who feel excited about the future of libraries and technology, put your hands up. Oh, great. No fear. Great. Thank you very much. So I'm not going to ask about the worries and about the other things. So questions from the floor. Do you have any questions for Professor Welch before we go into an interactive session? Don't be shy. Yes. Please, your name and your question. Thank you.
Hello, it's Jane Secker. My question is about the interdisciplinarity of your students and how that is catered for and the kind of role that you see for the library there. I know we did very briefly speak about this last night, but I'm just really interested in how you bridge all the disciplines that they come from to help them find literature, to, you know, to make sense of everything that there is that they're reading, because it must be quite a huge challenge, I think, for students from so many different backgrounds on your course.
Well, I think the most important part of that answer is we have a very good librarian. Okay, Muriel really knows space, and she knows all the different, you know, domains of space and where to find the information, the different specialist organisations around the world. We also have, one of the best general purpose space collections in Europe, if not in the world. The challenge is really to change the student's mindset. A student will come and see me and say, I've looked for information on this, I can't find anything. I say, how many pages did you go down in Google? And they go, 2. And I say, have you spoken to Muriel? No. Go and speak to Muriel. She's an information specialist. That's her thing, you know, and they go. And so it's, again, very much about the human, okay? And in this case, our librarian being very experienced, she's worked for ISU since it was set up, and she just knows the field really well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Got a question?
Hello, I'm Tom. We just voted if we were excited by the technological developments, but I wonder when you compare, for example, with the introduction Camille gave this morning, that was about being value-driven, respect, solidarity, that kind of values that were important, and they are important in libraries as well. Do they play a role in the work you do? Is it about technology, or is there also a layer around on ethics and values for mankind?
Okay, well, I'm a physicist turned engineer, so my focus is, you know, more on the physics and technology on a day-to-day basis. But actually, I now describe myself as a spacist. Okay, so I'm interested in everything to do with space. You know, it's just I have more expertise in the physics and engineering areas. So, you know, certainly, ethics, for example, is one of the things that we focus on. The French space agency CNES is, as far as I know, the only space agency in the world to actually employ an ethicist, Jacques Arnaud. And Jacques comes down from Paris and he meets with our students and discusses the ethical aspects of all the team projects they're doing. Simultaneously, in the kind of science and humanities intersection, there's an area of space exploration called planetary protection, which is all to do with how we don't contaminate our planet, but also how do we avoid contaminating other planets. And again, within the space community, there is at the one end the kind of more free enterprise, let's go to Mars and mine it. And at the other end, you've got the people saying, hang on, we don't know what biosystems are there, what might be just under the surface. We don't want to contaminate a pristine ecosystem. So there's no hard and fast answers, but in fact, you know, 2 years ago, one of our team projects was specifically on planetary protection for exploration of Jupiter's icy moons, and to look at the specific concerns there, both in science and technology, but also in international engagement, because you find America and Europe are very well into planetary protection. They have, you know, bodies that are set up. Russia and China, much less so. So how do you bring all the international players together? So that is part of the space domain. But you're right, I mean, at the moment there is also a lot of science and technology, but there are all these other aspects to it too.
Thank you very much again. Any last question before we go to the interactive panel with our other colleagues? Anyone want to? No? Okay. So let me just now introduce you to our 3 interactive panel members, plus Chris, of course. You please stay there and take part. We have Tine Vind. You've already been introduced, Tine. You're the Naples Forum Chair. We have Jukka Relander, who is the former. Are you now the former EBLIDA President? Can I say that? Yeah. Or the outgoing President and advisor at Keynote Helsinki in Finland, working on relevance design. And we have my colleague, Kathrin Merkle, who is the head of culture and cultural heritage division in the Council of Europe, who has been spending a lot of time, sometimes with me, on the impact of culture and digitization, and all with different experiences. And I'd really like to invite you perhaps to respond or to comment or to give a short intervention, each of you, 5 minutes each, for example, if that's possible, in response or in general in terms of this interactive session. We really are, this is the precursor to the next session, session 2, which is about practice, about your daily practice. But zooming out a little bit and staying within the Northern Hemisphere, because it's Denmark, Finland and Germany. You know, how is librarianship changing to challenge today? How are the working activities? What's the future look like? And that's where we are. We're looking to the future. So if I can start with, Kathrin, do you want to say some words to begin with regarding your work in the field of culture and silos and interdisciplinary work, etc.? The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I really need this? Yes. Thank you very much for this one. Yeah, good morning, everybody. Well, now, what to say after that one? First of all, thank you very much, Chris. That was very, very interesting. And I mentioned that on a very brief telephone call with Chris. I've been working a couple of years in Paris with UNESCO. And on my daily way to UNESCO office, I passed a strange building, nice building, in the 7th arrondissement. And the plate said European Space Agency. And I was always wondering, what the heck are they doing in there? What is that? And working for UNESCO was quite exciting, but then European Space Agency, I thought, that's big, that's weird. I would like to know more. But, well, now I do know more. Very impressive. Yet, I would like to come back to very conservative attitudes and more earthly problems that we are dealing with at the Council of Europe. We are not yet quite there in these space society studies or space diplomacy studies that you had on one of your slides. But we already moved on from digitization issues to artificial intelligence, and the entire organization is these days quite busily bringing together concerns, findings and ideas on artificial intelligence, and there will be a major conference taking place next February in Strasbourg on these issues. Now, my specific perspective as a head of culture and cultural heritage in these areas is, as I said, maybe more conservative. We've been wondering many years about how to get kids into libraries and with recent studies revealing, and Lee has just sent around a very interesting one, maybe you get back to that briefly, kids be finding it more and more difficult to read and to write. I mean, these are very, very basic skills, and apparently there's a direct link with the hours of use of mobile devices and telephones, specifically with small children. So reading patterns, of course, shifting, and then, as has been mentioned earlier this morning, I think by several speakers, and I think also by Ms. Gangloff, libraries are, of course, basis for democracy and lived experience democracy. They are theoretically open to all, but we know that not everybody is really going there and using them. So we have very earthly problems, and when I listen to Chris, I think again of Bloch, German philosopher, who has coined that beautiful word of, this is now very complicated, the contemporariness of the uncontemporary, die Gleichzeitigkeit des Ungleichzeitigen, which is a feature of modern times, and he coined that after the Second World War, of course, with a specific reference to what happened in Germany through the Nazis. But yes, I'm thinking very heavily now of the contemporariness of the uncontemporary when I see you all educating, training students for living out and fantasizing about moon, and we are here and we don't get the basics right. And that leads me maybe to my last comment on our work at the Council of Europe. We have been doing a number of recommendations on culture and digitization issues, which all turn around issues of access and participation, and very much about media and information literacy, dealing also with the concerns around big data. And a last recommendation, I brought some copies for you. I will make them available on the table outside. The last one dealing with issues of creativity. following a conference we had last year that was looking at the specific cultural tools for fighting populism, fake news, and what is referred to these days as information disorder in a more general term, and strengthening the role of cultural professionals, artists and scientists actually in this regard, and what are the digital tools for doing so. And result of those debates was that there is a big role for the cultural professionals and for the artists. And there was a reference made to not only media and information literacy as being central, but critical media and information literacy. So that comes on top to the technical skills, comes this critical mind. And ethics, of course, and some of our contributors even asked for civil disobedience and for civil disobedience being required these days. And that leads me to last research finding that we have achieved at the Council of Europe. We have developed an indicator framework on culture and democracy, as it is called. And we did some correlations. Of course, we cannot strictly speaking, refer to causality, but we found out that where you have more cultural participation, be it online or offline, and these two again are also intercorrelated because we know that those who are engaged with by any means. But where there is more of this cultural participation, you do have more tolerant attitudes. This was measured by statements regarding migrants, refugees, and their integration, and you have less populist leanings. And that's, again, very, very interesting, and I think we will be following on this thinking also in our future work, which is very much about creating cohesive democratic societies and these very earthly issues that we are facing right these days in Europe. So I was maybe too long. I apologize for that.
Thank you, Kathrin. Thank you for those insights. Now, Jukka, can you give us some interpretation of what's been said by Professor Chris Welch, Kathrin, from your perspective? You have roughly 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure if I can produce an interpretation, I'd probably produce a question. But let's see what happens. I'm very curious to hear what I'm going to say. To me, it sounds like you're building a library, and you should brand it as a library, to get more popularity and get more funding and so forth. Then you have to found a library association and join EBLIDA, start paying membership fees, and be part of the legitimate library community. But I was thinking when you said about kids reading and so forth, I mean, if the server would be in the moon, they would be very eager to reach it. So think about that, and there are countless possibilities. It should be fun. It could be something, providing services already now. I don't know about copyright laws in Moon, but there might be a chance to provide e-books from there. I mean, we can't do it here on Earth, but from Moon, you could probably have an access to an e-book. But okay, let's go to the question. My impression of this this project is that you're aiming to preserve, the outcome of our civilization in the south pole of the moon in a whole. That's very exciting. So what exactly you are preserving there? I mean, it's going to be very technical stuff. It's going to be like how to build a car or how to repair a bike. If you found one after this extinction and there's a bike, you have to fix it. Or is it going to be like children's books and poets and poems and philosophy or grammars of remote language spoken somewhere in northern Amazonas, which is based on coughing and hiccups. So, I mean, what is the selection of information you're choosing? I mean, is it possible to be a zoologist after the extinction of mankind when just few have reserved and you have the reserves up there? Or is it very, very kind of simple stuff to enable surviving? And I think this is an important question because it kind of I'm trying to ask what kind of image of humanity you have when you're building this project.
Yeah, the curation of the information was left fairly open, but it was intended to reflect the kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs type approach. So there would be survival related information easily accessible that tells you, I don't know, how to mend a bicycle or how to build a shelter or something like that. But at the same time, the plan was to support the longer term development so that every time you kind of, the society on the ground reached a new level and needed different information, it would be there up to and including the final sort of self-actualization aspects. So it was intended, I mean, without being specific about any of the content, to support all those stages from, how do we light a fire up to where do we go for dinner, in terms of society. How you create that, that was part of the kind of international organization. Because ISU students know quite a lot about space. They know much less about how to organize libraries, but they recognized that there was a need for people who were experts to decide how to curate it, and that would be left once the organization was actually set up. So,
thank you very much, Chris. Jukka, have you finished, or would you like to? Was that your point? Or
well, I'm basically finished. I will continue a bit later.
Okay, thank you very much.
We listen to her first.
Tina, your turn. Please give us 5 minutes of your reactions and reflections.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Chris, for your interesting speech. I was very happy that you mentioned the people before the technology and both sides of it, because I would like to draw a little line for what we have been discussed during the NAPLE meeting yesterday. When people talk about libraries, they always keep talking about the stock delivery or something like that. But the library, they are much more than that. So what we were discussing yesterday is, yes, we have new strategies and we have another focus now, but we are all aware of the digitized transformation that the libraries are in for the moment, and it gives us such challenges, but also new possibilities. So what we should be a bit more aware about is the customer needs. And if the customer needs are, for instance, having an archive on the moon, yes, let's find the competencies that can reach that in a way. But there might be a little step to go before that anyway. I also like to put a link back to you, Kathrin, because you mentioned something very, very important for us, at least the role of the importance of early literacy. We're discussing that very, very much in the public sector, of course, because it's when, how do we get children to have more access, and how do we manage to have children to get more competencies so that they can read better and better. So I don't know that, how many of your countries have had a reading access or reading campaign or something like that? Hands up, please. Oh yes, only a few that doesn't have any reading campaign. So that's also what libraries do, and we are important in that role. So therefore, the importance of the libraries is not only by technology, it's all about skills as well. But if we are going to face the new role, we also have to challenge and make an effort to the outreach strategy to combine and invite those people that are not library users, and to give those people lifelong learning skills so that they will be able to use all this kind of technologies that they will be facing now and in the future on the moon.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you. I'm going to thank you for your interventions. Thank you. So we're going to open the floor now. We have 15 minutes left before the coffee break, and so I'm going to push it back to you. I heard last night during the dinner that librarians are quite modest. Is that the word that was used? Modest and inquiet, worried. I don't know if that's true or not. So you can tell me whether you agree or disagree with those words. I would say that before I come back to you, so please have your questions ready for the panel. I would say that from my perspective, working in the Council of Europe, the role of the cultural institution of libraries is very important. We talk about it a lot. It's one of those actors in an ecosystem of public service delivery, which is perhaps not fully understood when you put them all together as a public service delivery. And I think there are worries, at least I worry sometimes, about the monetization of services which were public, which are now becoming private. And, you know, I'm thinking of Google and other companies besides, etc. And, you know, there's this blurring between public and private spheres. I think you've all alluded to it in different ways, and I'm sure you understand this. And so it's current in my own work, and it's extremely worrying to know how to, not divide it, but how to embrace it, meaning how to be fit for purpose for the future, being human, staying, the words they're using are curation, skills, being human, very important, access to knowledge, information or data, choose it accordingly. For me, that's very key. So I'd like to come to you. Do you have any questions for the panel? First of all, do you have any questions for Tine or Jukka or Kathrin or even Chris, of course? The floor is yours. Modest. Thank you. Okay. You. There's a microphone coming to you. There. Thank you very much. Your name and your question or your comment. Thank you.
Anders Söderbeck from Stockholm University Library. I have a question for, especially for Chris, I think. Since you're thinking about space a lot, you must also think about the future a lot. And we are talking about bridging borders between different nations. Do you think nation states will survive in space, and for how long?
Great question. It might take longer than 15 minutes, though.
Yeah, no, that is a very, very good question, because this whole thing of international space law was set on the basis that only nation states would go into space. We are already seeing some nation states passing national legislation that some of the lawyers say is in contradiction. So, for instance, both the United States and Luxembourg, who are moving, Luxembourg especially, is moving into space resources very heavily, okay, have passed legislation that effectively allows companies based in their countries to go into space, dig up bits of the moon and asteroids, and process it for commercial return. Now, depending on which lawyer you talk to, that's either fine or not fine. I honestly don't know. But what some of the more extreme people say is, well, we're going to go and do it anyway. How are you going to stop us? Yes, there may be an international legal regime. What's the enforcement? And that is not clear. And if the nation states don't continue to operate their own national programs, and it is just commerce in space, then yeah, I think basically, you'll have nation states on Earth, and you'll have a kind of quasi Wild West situation out there in space, which is why we've got this conference like Unispace Plus 50 to try and put some frameworks around it as quickly as possible. The problem is, of course, with the UN, it takes years to even get a small amount of agreement. Russia and America are always disagreeing with each other, partly because they mean it and partly because it's a game in terms of politics. So it's unclear. I would hope not. But we don't yet know how that's going to evolve. Will the moon, for example, ever have enough people to declare independence and be treated as a sovereign state of its own? There's a very strange organization called Asgardia, which is being funded by a Russian billionaire, as these things always are. And it wants to become a nation state without territory. It's calling itself the first space nation. And it has no territory, but is moving. He is becoming its head of state in about in 2.5 weeks, just after the Unispace thing. He will be sworn in as head of state for a country that has no territory.
You just opened up a rabbit hole in my mind. This is what I'm going to spend the next year diving into.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, please? Oh, it's coming. Okay, so Kathrin first, and then
Kathrin Storm. Let's imagine there's a disaster on Earth and nobody survives. But fortunately, Martian people managed to download our data and part of our culture. But who will cope with the curation towards Martian people?
It's interesting because in the case of like a lunar archive, we're curating that primarily to be of service to humanity. But there have been other instances where humanity has sent messages out to the stars. For instance, there were the images and the music recorded on the Voyager and Pioneer records, which in principle could be discovered by aliens in the future. And there was a lot of debate about, for instance, which images got chosen. If you looked at all the images, you'd think that human beings never had wars because there were no pictures of humans being nasty to each other on that. There's an interesting sort of fictional documentary called The Visit, made by the Danish filmmaker Michael Madsen, and I should declare that I and other people in the ISU community are in that. And in that, an alien who you never see comes to Earth and is talking to all these people, and this is one of the things that comes out. It's quite a clever piece because on the one hand it's about an alien coming to Earth, but it's really more of a kind of philosophical inquiry into the nature of otherness. And it addresses all those questions. How do we see ourselves? How do we attempt to portray ourselves to hypothetical aliens? And do we show ourselves our best side, or are we honest about all the vicious, horrible things that humans have done to each other and to the planet? I don't think there's a straightforward answer, but it's something that needs to be decided if we're sending messages out into space.
Thank you. Julie, you have a question?
I already have. Julie Calmus. Yes, it is true, and you all underlined this, that our daily reality puts us very far away from this moon data saving program. But still, we have to imagine the future and open, if we have to get back to the subject, to open our symbolic borders. So I'd like to ask to all of you, what is for you the idealistic future of data preservation, data curation?
Okay, good. Thank you. Good question.
I'll start with that. As free access as possible. So no limitation at all. So make the governmentals have some free programs for protecting and saving and displaying data for everyone. And you can use the library as an inter-loan disciplinarity study or whatever, but use the libraries for that.
Thank you. Jukka, do you want to?
Well, I vote for the moon. It seems like your dream might come true there, because the copyright legislation in moon is rather undeveloped, as is the taxation. That's why Luxembourg is so interested in that area. But, I mean, okay, we have achieved a lot and we have a lot of information. If something bad happens, it has to be preserved. And there's another equivalent interesting project. All the seeds of the planet are being preserved in, I don't know, what do you call this, Norwegian islands, close to Svalbard, yeah. It's close to the North Pole, and they have huge archive for the seeds. I don't know if you're going to cooperate with them and take the seeds to the space, just in case. But yeah, we need to do that. I mean, that's a very unlikely scenario. And my kind of top plan is to preserve the planet. And let's do that first. But in case something bad happens, we need these two projects. That's a good thing.
Thank you. Thank you, Jukka. Kathrin?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with the two speakers before. Of course, accessibility, democratic accessibility, transparency, and first things first. I mean, as long as the climate is heating up and we have these very pragmatic issues and problems in front daily, on a daily basis, I would like to tackle these. I'm an optimistic and active person. I need to see things happen. Otherwise, I turn very unhappy. And I feel safe now, much safer than before, Chris. So thank you once more, knowing that all of this is happening there and that we can eternally rely on that. But we are still here.
Thank you, Kathrin. Just a quick question to all of you, in fact. EBLIDA-NAPLE Forum and the work that you're doing, archiving on the moon. Is there any initiative as a public service bodies to think about these things, this longer-term perspective? Is there any initiative at your level in investing for the future, or is it too far away for you? I mean, is there any collaboration there between these faraway archiving examples and your work, or not? No? Yes?
Well, my impression is that they are thinking about these things all the time, and there are difficulties in sort of digital information, how to store that on a sustainable basis. And probably this one option is, of course, to make microchips and ship them to moon. But there are, this kind of thinking is existing, and that's in the core of librarianship in a way, because libraries, you can approach library from two different angles. One of them is the services you're getting from there, which is kind of day-to-day based consumption of the books which happen to be there. But the other side, it has always been, and it still is, particularly in maybe Mediterranean countries with longer history and so forth, that they are storing things which are from, go back thousands of years, and they're still having these and making them accessible to the researchers and to the public, and that's the core of having a library.
Yeah, thank you, Tina.
Yes, since we have this, we join forces every year in like the conferences here. So of course, we do discuss the strategic level, or how do we go any further, so that we don't even just see the problems of archiving things, but also give each other ideas of what's going on in that. So there will be a certain, for NAPLE, the governmental perspective, of course, and EBLIDA, since there's various associations talking about how the digitization will move on further. I think we should address that in a future conference as well. We can invite you, Chris.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, we're about to come to the coffee break. It's almost 10:30. Thank you for your comments. Thank you very much, Chris, for the presentation. Thank you to you. But the future is already here. I mean, again, I come back to the work with regard to the internet, and I'm wondering whether there are any principles governing this area or the future area. And when I tackle the issue of human rights and the internet and the question of public service, you look at the new principles coming through, emerging with regard to how we function, how we break borders, how we bridge borders, interoperability, neutrality, integrity. A lot of discussions being had in the field of how the internet evolves and how it's preserved, in fact, because there are attempts to put borders on it. So it's perhaps another discussion to think about for the future. But principles and process, how you process these principles is something which I'm dealing with, or have been dealing with in the past. Maybe it's something for libraries too. On that note, let's have a coffee break. Please come back at 11 o'clock. There's also Colleen there drawing, so why not take a look at her wonderful drawings and text, and I'll see you at 11. Thank you.
Just a quick message. Please, can you just leave your headphones in the room, all your package? Thank you very much.